What's the most FD up crime that's ever happened in your town area? Maybe not the most fricked up, but my high school systemically spied on students through the cameras of their school-issued laptops and attempted to discipline a student for something he did at home in front of the camera. A kid from my high school had a schizophrenic episode and beat his grandparents' head in with a bat a few years ago. He came to in a Walmart parking lot and called the cops to say he's covered in blood and has no idea how. Scary crap. They actually had an estate sale in the house recently and it was absolutely eerie as frick. This guy beat his family with a knife sharpener and is now in jail for several years. It was one of our high school teacher too. My cousin was arrested in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario for stealing 10,000 condoms. He was referred to as the condom king in the local paper. He broke into a business at night hoping to score some goods he could sell. He filled his bag with what he thought were baseball or Pokemon cards as they were stored in long cardboard boxes. He was arrested upon exiting the building. It turns out the business he was robbing were the guys who fill the condom dispensers at bars and such. We still make fun of him. Yes, he did time for it. No, he hasn't turned his life around. Susan Smith lived a few counties over from me. She's the lady that strapped her 2 kids in the car and rolled it into a lake. This was mid-90s. That's not too far from where I live, actually, just the next county over, in my neck of the woods. There was a murder-suicide a couple houses down from mine a while back. I forgot, our town mayor was murdered back in 2010. Guy who just got out of prison set his house on fire and when the firefighters came to put out the fire he shot at them. Why was he upset with the fire department, you ask? Because his mother left her money to the fire department when she died while he was in prison, and not to him. Why was he in prison? Because he literally murdered his granny with a hammer, which is probably why his mother didn't leave him her money since that was her mother he killed. I did know about the most fricked up, but it personally fricked me up. 5 years ago, my neighbor was shot to death in her own garage after she came home from work. On her way home, she'd stopped at the ATM for a withdrawal, and these guys followed her. I think they were teens at the time. They came into the garage before she could close the door, and told her to give them her purse. They had a gun, but I guess she didn't believe these teens would shoot her. She told them there was hardly any cash in there, and they wouldn't be able to do any with the cards. So, basically, she told them no, go home. Well, they didn't. They shot her, and took her purse. Wanna know what was in there? $40 and thyroid meds. They killed a woman I'd known since I was 7 years old, the mom of one of my best childhood friends, over that. A couple of kids in my city jumped, shot and killed an old man on Halloween last year for the $20 in nickels he was handing out. There are people out there who just don't give the tiniest crap about a person's life. The acid bath murders. Chap killed at least 6 people so that he could take their possessions and sell them, then disposed of the bodies by dissolving them in sulfuric acid. I had a relative who lived right near him as well. In my hometown, there was about 15 people who went missing, all of them prostitutes, over a span of 20 years. If I recall correctly, a couple years back some teenagers found the remains of their bodies on a beach. You know that guy who murdered loads of people and used an acid bath to destroy the bodies? One of my aunts lived next door to him and he invited her over several times. Luckily she ignored him. I don't know if it was the most effed up crime ever in our town, but it was for me personally. One of my best friends got murdered by her boyfriend. He had a psychotic episode and stabbed her multiple times. She was dead before she arrived at the hospital. That's horrible. I'm sorry for your loss. Douglas Garland kidnapped 2 grandparents, tortured and killed them, and burned the bodies over a business grudge with the guy. Did the same to their 5-year-old grandson who happened to be there. Got 75 years to life, 3 first-degree murder, and has been beaten up by other inmates twice in 3 weeks. Prison justice is no joke. You don't want to be that guy in jail for any crime against children. A woman in our area, if I recall correctly, she had severe dementia, shot her husband in the chest 17 times with a .22 rifle. She hung his body in a tree over the river on their property using a 4-wheeler. She proceeded to call the bar down the road to tell them what she did. Went to high school with the gal who was bartending and answered at the bar. I once bought a car from a lady with dementia. The car had a bunch of small dings on the body because she would sit outside her house shooting a BB gun at deer or anything else she could, including the Mercedes I eventually bought from her. Don't know why, but this story reminded me of her without the murder and all. A guy opened a hot dog stand, very cheap hot dogs. Turn out he was killing stray dogs and making sausage out of them. This happened in Morocco. The East Bay rapist Golden State Killer terrorized my area back in the 1970s. Side note, they just caught him like 2 days ago. He turned out to be an ex-cop and was 72 years old, but I read that in my town he snuck into a couple's house at night, held the couple in bed at gunpoint and hog-tied the husband on his stomach with arms and legs behind him. He then stacked glass plates cups on his back and told him, "If I hear any of this glass make any noise I will kill you and your wife." Then he took his wife into the other room and had his way with her. I'm midway through the book on the Golden State Killer and suddenly seeing his face in the news of his arrest yesterday was quite a shock. Horribly sick guy, and it sounds like he was a pretty scary neighbor as well. Now this was either in the 70s or 80s, not sure, but the house we rent used to have a family of 3, an alcoholic abusive father and his 2 teenage boys. Now I think boy 1 was pretty shy and small or something. Boy 2 started working out a freaking ton and was totally jacked. One day father is being a piece of crap and boy 2 punches the dad in the face to protect boy 1. Now I don't remember the exact details from the first time we heard this story, but I think the punch fricked something up with either the skull or jaw or something. Something broke when he punched the dude. He fell down the flight of stairs from the punch, died almost instantly. Now instead of maybe calling the police or something, they drag his body into the garage and cut him up into small pieces, put him in the trunk of the car and just abandon the car somewhere. They got caught pretty soon after. Don't know whatever happened to boy 2. I think he was in prison for a long time. Pretty sure boy 1 was in and out of institutions till he went and did a string of arsons. This one is really, really sad. My neighbor shot a guy in the woods while he was poaching. On a Sunday, the victim was walking alone in his family's backwoods, visiting from the city. He survived being shot, so my neighbor covered him with leaves and went home. He took a shower, then drove his kids to the nearby city to leave them with relatives, then came back to our neighborhood and waited a while before calling 911. He for sure let that poor guy suffer and die alone in the forest, because he was too scared to own up to shooting him. Amazingly, he did no time. His wife left him though, and he finally went to jail for attacking her new boyfriend, who was a cop. Not justice, but at least he got some punishment in his life. This man and his girlfriend got in an argument while they were in the hot tub. He gets out of the tub and gets his pet python, which must have been pretty large, because he beat her to death with it. After he bludgeoned her, he threw the snake in the hot tub, where it boiled to death. I believe he got charged with murder charges, cruelty to animals. I googled this out of curiosity. The woman didn't die. He got charged with assault and animal cruelty. One of my best friends was killed by a drunk driver in 2016, the summer before we went off to college. The driver had 4 previous DUIs, a suspended license, and was driving a car not his own. His back was 0.33% and he slammed into the back of her car going 90 plus mph. She just left the mini golf ice cream place. In her memory there's been a scholarship created for seniors every year. It was as big news. Her family and friends won't let anyone forget. The town I went to high school and had my first law enforcement job in had 1,200 people tops. The most scandalous fricked up crime that happened was some guy got high on something, but he stole a chicken and was chased down by police. The scandalous part was he butt naked, riding a bike and masturbating while carrying the stolen chicken. The perplexed jumble radio calls I got on that was absolutely hysterical. That's talent. One hand on a chicken, one on your dong, none on the handlebars. Guy puts his wife's purse in the middle of his garage, turns the lights on, leaves the door open, and shoots and kills a foreign exchange student who started up the driveway. This thing went from a 1 to an 11 so quickly. A long time ago, end of the 1800s I think, 2 girls were kidnapped, murdered, and chopped up while walking to school in my town. That's fricked up. What's more fricked up is that to this day there is a monument directly across the street from the middle school to them. What's more fricked up is if you follow the trail behind that monument, there are other stone markers marking where they found each of their body parts. In my area, this dude, whilst strung out on drugs, dropped a baby off a bridge down onto a busy highway. I believe he was supposed to be babysitting. A few towns over, this guy took a meat cleaver, went up to a woman sitting outside a busy shopping center, and cleaved her to death right there, in front of everyone present. In my hometown just recently, a man came home to find his wife had packed all her belongings and their sons. He was 8 I think, and was leaving him because of his drinking problem. She apparently confronted him multiple times about it and he would stop for a while then go back to it. He was already intoxicated, and it was also suspected that he was on some illegal substance, and he went and got his gun and shot her in the head. He went to the son's room, where he was waiting for the mom to come get him and shot him, too, but it didn't kill him. The man then turned the gun on himself and committed suicide. The neighbors were the ones who called the cops. It was a pretty big deal for the small town. I didn't know the family. I think they had moved there recently, after I moved away, but my dad sent me the newspaper article. Oh, and in the town over, a college girl went missing and they spent months trying to find her. I'm not 100% sure if they ever found a body, but I think they eventually did charge her boyfriend with murder, so I'm pretty sure they found her remains somewhere in the desert. A college student broke into the zoo with a few of his friends, injured a flamingo, and stole its mate. He killed the flamingo and dumped it on the side of the road. The other injured flamingo died a day later due to the loss of its mate. There was a manhunt for a few days until the idiot posted a video on YouTube singing about how he stole and killed the flamingo. He lost his scholarship, was banned from the university, and I believe he had to pay $5,000 or $10,000 to the zoo for the cost of the flamingos. Guy killed his wife, cut her up, stuffed the parts in bin bags and stored them under their toddler's pushchair. Took the kids out for a walk and threw the parts onto the railway. Other parts were buried in the local fun fair. I think her head went in the rubbish tip. All the while he was on TV pleading for her to come home for 18 months till they found him out. That was one of the most messed up things I'd heard till I read this thread and realized I'm sheltered. Jeffrey Dahmer, Milwaukee, WI, serial killer, cannibal, and the story includes cops returning an underage Asian kid back to Dahmer when the child was in the act of escaping. My PE teacher was so charismatic and funny and everyone wanted his class. He also coached softball. I was very close with him and rumors started flying about him being seen with this girl on the softball team in his car, etc. I told him about the rumor and he kinda scoffed and gave this look like kids always make crap up. 3 weeks later he went to his father's grave, shot himself and left a note for the softball player. The funeral was so sad and the softball player tried to show up and was immediately escorted out. His wife and kids walking up to the casket was hard to watch. This kid I graduated with 2 years ago ended up shooting his girlfriend, shot her unborn baby first, then one in the forehead all right outside of McDonald's in broad daylight in front of people. Probably not the worst to happen around here, but definitely up there. When I was in the 8th grade, a father here killed his 3 kids and we had to go on lockdown at the school for a few hours because apparently he made his way to the school. I remember being spooked, but I didn't fully understand back then. In retrospect it sounds kind of insane. The James Byrd dragging death is pretty unforgettable. 3 white supremacists dragged James Byrd Jr. behind a truck for 3 miles of asphalt. He finally died when his body hit a curb and decapitated him. It's Texas, so there's plenty of crimes of note, but this one always stuck in my head. That was one of the hardest crimes to read about. That 3 people could be so flippant and cruel as to drag another human while alive until he broke apart on a curb is sickening. A serial rapist murder lived behind me growing up. I had no idea till decades later that horrible crap was happening in my own backyard. Some crazy dude chopped off his mother's head and put it on her front porch. Since it was Halloween time, passerbys thought her head was just part of the festivities. Finally got called when the swarm of flies came. I pass by the house every now and again. Still gives me the heebie-jeebies. Bunch of kids running around in the woods found a pre-dug hole about a meter deep. The younger kids thought this would make an awesome fort, but the older kid recognized that this 2 by 1 meter hole was the exact dimensions of a grave. He got the other kids out of there and alerted the police. The police didn't know who dug the hole, but they came back each day until one day they found the hole filled up. The forensic team came in, dug up the hole and found the body of a female. At pretty much the same time, a man was reporting his wife as missing at the local police station. Sure enough, the body in the grave was the man's wife. I used to live in New York City. A lot of people don't know that most crimes there, particularly the worst, don't go reported to the public by the police to avoid panic. My uncle, who was a cop, would frequently warn our family to stay away from certain areas to give us a heads up the public doesn't usually get. One that stuck out to me was when he warned my mother to avoid certain subway routes because some guy was decapitating women alive there. I live in Rosarito, Tijuana. I read most of these and think, oh, that's pretty bad. Then look at the news. At that moment I'm like, dang, worst crime in some places wouldn't even make the news here. A 19-year-old named Andrew and his girlfriend Chelsea forced Chelsea's roommate to kill Andrew's parents so that they could all split his parents' multi-million-dollar estate. The roommate got life with possible parole after 30. Chelsea was the first female to receive the death sentence in Tarrant Country. Andrew received life with possible parole after 40 years. I fell in love at first sight with a girl in my 8th grade honors English class. Our freshman year of high school she went missing and was later arrested in connection with the brutal murder of an elderly woman in the town she lived in. She and 2 other dudes knocked on this woman's back door and asked to use her phone. Once inside, one of the guys stabbed her multiple times, beat her, and smashed her head with a microwave. When she got out of prison and I was fresh out of high school, we got together, dated, had a daughter, got married, and now we're divorced. A few kids were playing around their house and found a suitcase with human remains inside. This guy strangled his girlfriend with his bare hands, dismembered her in a bathtub and then separated her body parts into a suitcase, a hockey bag, 2 backpacks and a freezer, most of which he threw into a river and have never been recovered. The kids found the suitcase that had her torso. Yesterday a man killed a sheriff, stole his car and robbed a Cumberland Farms gas station. This was about 20 minutes away from me. The guy's name is John Williams. The police are in a manhunt across the state trying to find him. 2 high school kids picked a house at random and hacked a woman to death with a machete. Tried to kill her 9-year-old daughter too, but she escaped with a slit throat. The husband was away on business. Really shook up the tiny town where nothing ever happened. Some guy was beating his girlfriend up. Her little kid got in the way and he stabbed the kid to death. It shook up our small town for a while. 3 cinematography college students were abducted and their remains were found a couple months later dissolving in acid. They were presumably doing a short film of some sort about drugs, drug lords, and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.